Hello.
Hey, how are you?
Pretty good. Can you hear me okay?
I can, yes.
Good, good. All right, welcome to Chasing Nightmares. We have a special guest tonight. His name is Keith, and he's an author of a couple of really interesting novels that are number one bestsellers on Amazon. And he has an interesting, um, well, uh, outlook on vampires and other type paranormal entities. Let's welcome Keith to the show.
Keith Evans. Here you go. Hey, Keith.
Hello.
Keith,
How you doing?
Good.
Okay, so do you want to tell us a little bit about your interesting? Well, you've done a lot of interesting things in your life. I was reading some of your career choices, and it says that you were a forensic scientist at one point in time. You were saying?
Yes. Yes.
Very, very fascinating. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what got you into the paranormal?
Well, when I was 4 years old, I noticed that when I went to a relative's house, the house was built around the 1850s. They had wood with the original grain and the very high glossy finish. And I just thought that wood was very nice looking, and it made me happy to look at it. And when I told my parents about that, they thought I was a little off. And so anyway, I didn't know the term for it, but that was more or less me figuring out that I was an empath, and I could feel the joy that certain type of wainscoting had brought my family members. And I think because it was a house that had been a direct family member, direct family members to my bloodline had lived there, I think it even made my ability to empathically feel their emotions of the family members who had passed away. I felt the joy that wainscoting had brought them during their lifetime. It was probably something they were very proud of, and if anyone came into the house, I'm sure that they were very proud to show them and talk about the wainscoting.
Interesting. So was that something that was kind of confusing for you as when you were growing up? Like, because I know nothing about what it's like to be sensitive. People say I'm sensitive as a rock, actually, but like, so growing up, like, are there certain like things that you dealt with that you didn't understand, like this in particular, like stories like
no
this?
I would say that I was intrigued. I wanted to learn more about why I was feeling this way. It wasn't a negative feeling, it was a happy feeling. And of course, my parents thought, well, what's wrong with him? Kids 4 years old aren't attractive or made happy by looking at walls, or the wainscoting is like the lower wall up to like chair level. So they were concerned, and that made me more concerned. I was more concerned about how my image would be betrayed by my parents, because my parents were ready to throw me under the bus or put me on the short bus. I don't know what the term would be today for adults who aren't really, that capable.
Outside the box a little bit on their.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I pretty much kept it to myself because I didn't want my parents thinking that, because it wasn't true.
Right.
So I pretty much went within when it comes to paranormal. If I did any type of paranormal research, it was very primitive. I didn't have any equipment until maybe 2011. So what I did was primitive, and I just didn't talk about it. I kept it to myself. So, but I was very much interested in the paranormal, and I definitely didn't know why I was feeling so much joy by sensing other people's joy and the fact that they had a beautiful part of the house that they were really proud of. And I, to this day, if I go into an antique shop, I don't collect antiques. Probably the closest thing I collect to antiques are coins, and I don't do that much anymore either. But when I go into an antique shop, it always makes me feel good, because I'm feeling all the love and joy that each person had in their particular antique, or whatever it may be, a coin, an old bottle, or an old painting, or whatever type of antique you can think of, a piece of furniture.
Very interesting. No, I can relate to you. When I was growing up, my family was very religious, and I had to also I couldn't really disclose to them what I did either. That's interesting. One of the first people I've ever talked to that actually, I can relate to on that area. Where, I was always, it was always devil worship. If you investigate the paranormal, and
Oh yeah.
yeah, very strange. My really, really, really interesting. That aspect of it. Hearing it from somebody else, because that's something that really impacts you. Yeah, you're worried about how you're looked, how you're viewed, by people that don't understand what you're doing. And no, that's a rough one. And myself, I also started very primitive, like you're talking about. I had a digital camera that I used for everything. I recorded audio with it, and I took pictures with it, and
Yeah.
my go-to piece of equipment. And it was. I can definitely relate to that. Let's talk a little bit about your novels. You have you have one based on vampires, and you said it's a very unique perspective on vampires, or very accurate. There it is, right there. Yeah. I'm gonna have to check that out, because it's pretty interesting stuff there. So what? Of course, a lot of folklore is based upon some portion of reality. We know that. Vampires, there's all different types of outlooks on vampires. We know spirits can drain your energy. There are vampire cults that actually partake in a form of cannibalism. They drink each other's blood. So vampires are real. I really do feel that to a certain degree they are real. So what made you fascinated with with this whole vampiric outlook on the paranormal?
Well, the bottom line is vampires, dead or alive, really I started thinking about the book back when I was in middle school, and this was in the late 60s. There was a British sitcom that came on 4:30 in the afternoon in Maryland that I used to watch when I got home from school. And it was all based on paranormal. And since I was very interested in the paranormal, but had to go underground with it because my parents, to this day, they'll probably still tell anyone. If somebody wanted to hire me as a forensic scientist, they say, "Oh, no, don't do that. He's seeing and hearing things that aren't real. You don't want to get involved with this guy." And for years, until I had my degree in chemistry, which wasn't until I was 50, for years, the best thing I could get when I lived in Maryland was a minimum wage job, because they kept using this without using this.
Right.
So anyway, I really feel that my background for writing this book started with Dark Shadows. I really loved the character Barnabas, and I really thought he was kind of like a misunderstood bad guy. And I kind of felt the same way. I could identify with Barnabas because I got to be the bad guy for just being empathic and sharing that with my parents. As a child, you want to share everything with your parents, but I realized as a young age, I couldn't do that. Doing that made things worse than made them better. So anyway, I've had since about Dark Shadows was probably on maybe in 65 or 1966 at the earliest. It ran for about 3 or 4 years in Maryland. So I've had that period of time to think about vampires and, are they dead? Are they alive? To me, they're a combination of both. And we base everything on life as we know it here on Earth. That doesn't mean that life in other places and other galaxies, their life might be more like dead people than living people compared to us. So anyway, I really wanted to write a book where I took each chapter and boiled it down to one of the characteristics of the historical vampire, the vampire within the last 200-300 years, and then take the characteristic and compare it. Is it more like a dead person or like a living person? And then I wanted to use theoretical physics, biology, genetics, and astrophysics to try to explain why a vampire can do what they do. Because I realized I never saw any book or anyone try to do that. And I thought, why haven't they done that yet? And I thought, hey, that's a good idea for a book. Now, my book is fairly short. Vampires Dead or Alive is probably less than 50 pages, but there's no fluff in it. I've read books where I wanted to know about a certain person's life and history, and the first 23 pages of the chapter was talking about how hot the days were in Florida when this gentleman was living, and how dirty the streets were, and how living conditions were for this person compared to this person. And then on the last page, you get one paragraph where it tells you what you really want to know, that you've been reading the whole chapter for. My book's not like that. My book's short and sweet. You get the meat and potatoes of what you're reading about, and you're going to find out how I feel about, is this vampire's characteristics, say, not having a mirror image? Is that more like, is he dead or is he alive? Well, every living being I know, unless they can bend light, should have a reflection in a mirror. Now, if you have a vampire that has advanced technology where they can bend light around themselves, then they may not have a reflection in the mirror. Or if the vampire is just generating his audio and visual directly to your brain, he's not even physically there to generate any type of reflection. And it could be another thing. The vampire might be in a different dimension so that you can see him, but he's not really fully in our dimension, so he may not have a mirror image. So I would attempt to, explain that even a dead person will have a mirror image if they're physically there. They can't bend light around them. So if they're in front of a mirror, you're going to see the image of a dead person too. So, the fact that a vampire does not have a mirror image would not match either a dead, dead or a living person, because dead and living people all have, an image in the mirror. But the bottom line is, I try to explain why a vampire may not have an image in the mirror. And I do that throughout just about every characteristic that I've been able to remember about the traditional vampire. Now, one thing I don't cover about vampires, I don't cover the energetic vampire, or the vampire that can draw your energy, because I really think that's more like abuse. It's
Right.
It's like psychological abuse. It's not really a vampire. They just tag vampires in name, which I think is negative. I wouldn't do that. I don't think it should be. So I don't go into energetic vampires, because I think anyone who's abusing you is going to drain your energy. I mean, my parents might have thought they were doing the right thing, but when they started, comparing me to a person that wasn't able to learn because I wanted to know about paranormal, I think that drained my energy right there. It made me think, oh my God, couldn't I got better parents?
Right.
But it's the luck of the draw.
Well, no, very interesting outlook on that. There was some experiments I was doing with AI, and one of the things that the supposed machine was saying is that, like, because I specialize in demonic phenomenon. That's what I specialize in, and it's talking about how these supposed fallen angels do what they do is through technology. Now, that's very interesting that you say that about the whole technological aspect of paranormal. I mean, I often had this theory that maybe just maybe how these interdimensional beings are doing what they're doing is not as magical as what you would think. It has to do with its form of technology, which is very, 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 very interesting that you mentioned that. But no, that is a very interesting outlook on comparing logical, physics to how these beings could be doing things that seem impossible. which is that's a very fascinating outlook, and that is interesting to hear you say that, because not a lot of people are touching on that aspect of it.
Well, 100 years ago, if you would have told someone they would be using a cell phone to watch, they wouldn't even know what TV was 100 years ago.
Right.
And they didn't have any type of phone. The only thing they had was a telegraph service.
Right.
So if you would have talked about, what we have in technology today, they would have treated, they'd treat you the way my parents treated me when I was little.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, some forms of technology. Well, my whole standing with paranormal is there is a science behind it. Period.
Yes,
that we can measure.
I agree.
We just don't know what it is yet, and we're, but there are scientific tools we can use to measure it, 100%. And at the end of the day, it's like smoke and mirrors. It's not as magical. It's not as mystical as what you would think. There have been all kinds of case studies, like with people questioning. I don't know what your outlook on non-human entities are, demonic beings, and so on. But through people that were possessed were questioning this entity, like how they were able to do some of the things that they did, and it's really pretty simple. There was a blood manifestation that kept happening in this location, and the thing just said, well, what we do is we gather blood from local roadkill, and we just transport it here. I mean, something pretty simple, but I mean, that's not what you're talking about. But there is a connection between some of these entities. I feel are of an alien status, so to speak. Like they're not human. They're not from here. And a lot of this is a type of technology that we're viewing. And like right now in the government, there's all kinds of reverse engineering, supposedly, where these UFOs or UAPs, whatever they call them now, are being disclosed, and it's a form of technology that these beings are able to do what they're doing. And there's a connection, I think, to all this. And it's weird, or not weird, but interesting that somebody else is looking at it from that point of view.
I really feel that vampires probably are a cryptid. I don't think that they're paranormal, but there's a thin line between cryptid, paranormal, and also extraterrestrial, because I really feel that even humans are extraterrestrial. We're the only animal on Earth that can get a sunburn or a suntan, so we probably came from someplace else. And I look at it this way: vampires, since they cannot be exposed to light, I feel that sunlight will unravel their DNA, and denature it is when it's unraveled, and it'll kill them. So I think that originally vampires probably came from another universe where they had a very dim star, either a white or a blue dwarf star, to where their daylight hours were similar to how we have moonlight at night on a full moon night. Right. So that's probably the reason why vampires have a hard time dealing with sunlight. That fact that it'll kill them. But the situation is with vampires, I'm sure that they are extraterrestrial, and some of them may have been here for thousands of years, and they're probably genetically close enough to humans to have interbreeded. So all of us might have a bit of vampire in us. It may not genetically come out that we have every trait of a vampire, and I don't truly believe that even a genuine vampire who comes here extraterrestrial, say today or tomorrow, not all of them may have all the traits that every vampire is declared to have.
Well, what you're looking at, though, I mean, so there's a growing theory that the whole concept of aliens is not like something from a far off solar system or millions of light years away, that more like an interdimensional being. And so do you feel that like these things are from another planet, or do you think that they're from another reality, like a different different dimension, interdimensional type?
Well, it could be both. It could be both. I mean, I'm not 100% sure and can't prove one way or the other, but why wouldn't interdimensional beings also have a opportunity to become a vampire?
That's it.
The same way as other planets.
Yeah, they would be alien no matter what. They'd be alien to our existence or to our reality, no matter what they would be.
Right.
Very interesting outlook. Like with the vampires, do you feel that there is and almost like a cult type element to what the vampires do, like the consumption of human blood, things like that? Of course, the famous Dracula. I mean, Vlad the Impaler. He was like the fictional godfather of how we view vampires. But what's interesting about his father, if I have this correct, because I haven't done a lot of the research on this, but he was he was named the dragon, or after the devil, and there was a lot of occultic stuff involved with the symbolism of consuming blood, because of the consumption of blood that originates in the Bible. The blood being the life force, that you're not supposed to, according to Scripture, you're not supposed to consume blood. That's why people drain the animal's blood when they butcher an animal, because that belongs to God, supposedly. Do you think there's any symbolism between the vampire, the traditional vampire outlook, and like ancient ritualistic type activities? Do you think there's anything connected to that, or because I mean,
I'm not really sure, but I will say one thing. The reason why most people don't drink blood is because it's high in iron, and
right.
We don't have anything within our system to filter that iron out. And they did research, it's in my book, on vampire bats in a cave in either Central or South America. And the research team, I think, was from New Zealand. So they had done research on the genetics behind vampire bats compared to other bats that aren't blood drinking.
Right.
And the bottom line it is, vampire bats had a whole line of genetic makeup which allowed them to drink blood. For instance, like their lining of their intestines would filter out the iron, so that apparently the iron is not going to be good if you get too much of it in your system. So it has to be filtered out. So that's the reason why the vampire bats cave droppings are so good for fertilizer. It's because they're high content of iron. But regular bats and like human beings don't have that type of genetic mutation that the vampire bats have. So a regular bat, they can't filter out that iron, and we can't either. And that's one reason, some people might take a sip of it and say, I'm a vampire, but I don't think they diet on it 100% without subsidizing their diet with other foods. So, but I don't know that much about ancient folklore and things like that. I really haven't studied that to compare a vampire to that.
Well, very good point you touched on, because blood is basically bad for our consumption. Just exactly what you said. And according to the Mosaic Law, which was the Old Testament of the Bible, it talks about, it has these Mosaic laws, and a lot of them now, like, they look into them, and there's a science, and they make sense according to science. Like, consumption of blood wasn't good because of what you're talking about. Exactly, 100%. A lot of it had to do with disease, because they didn't understand, that you can catch disease from doing certain things. So, like, the whole thing about not eating pork had to do with a parasite, and they had to cook it really well, of course, and like the certain types of animals that they weren't allowed to consume. Some were shellfish. There were anything with a type of a split hoof, like pigs and stuff. It makes perfect sense once you relate to science nowadays. So no, absolutely. Like, the blood wasn't sacred. I feel it was like there was a problem with eating it, consuming it. And
also blood is not really that nutritious. Vampire bats have a tendency to starve to death because they they have to eat probably every 2 to 4 hours or they'll starve to death.
Right.
And vampire bats mainly feed on larger mammals like cows, elk, deer, horses, and they don't have hypodermic canines like the theoretical vampire has. They actually take their teeth and scratch the surface and just sip the blood. But vampire bats have been known to starve to death because blood is such a poor nutritional meal.
Right. Exactly. Well, and any kind of animal like that, like leeches or other types of animals, like don't vampire bats have a numbing compound in their saliva too to make the animal unaware? It's very really interesting. Like, but no, it's not a nutritional aspect. As a matter of fact, there's such thing as blood sausage, which is not. It doesn't have a nutritional aspect to it. But what's fascinating is that these ancient rituals or these ancient, they'd be ritualistic type of deal, that they match with what we've discovered scientifically in, as of where we sit now. So case in point, there's a scientific, definitely an aspect to this, everything that we're studying right now. And as far as like, there's, like you're saying, like the energy draining, parasitic, that makes sense too, because case in point, like a deadly virus, when it starts off, like it's very, very lethal to its host. But as time goes on, the virus says, "Why would I want to kill my host? I want to keep it alive. I want to feed off of it." And there is a very, very there has to be something to this vampire ideology, because there's such a rich historical significance when it comes to that. Like all these cultures believe in vampires. And ancient people don't get enough credit. I feel they really don't. Like what they do is very like illegitimately explained. Like, well, they believed in this because there were seasons, and so they did all these elaborate. They built idols to this because the sun. No. There's something that they definitely saw and experienced that made them believe in this so much that they dedicate a lot of time and effort and portions of their lives to whatever they were witnessing. Same with vampires.
I think you're right. There's vampires in all cultures. So, in these cultures, prior to 200-300 years ago, they didn't travel that much and intermingle to be sharing the subject matter. So they came up with it on their own, and I think that's pretty cool because. It shows you that vampires were spread throughout all cultures and had made their contact with human beings and made themselves known. And I really concentrate on the part about vampires being able to self-heal once they pass away. And up until, say, the 1850s, when we had the Civil War in America, they didn't use embalming fluid. So anyone who was buried, they just put them in the coffin and sealed it up, and that was it. So I think that anyone who had a gene concerning vampire and could self-heal in their coffin could come back to life if they were ever disturbed. But I really feel that these people who were actually within their coffins were able to heal, maybe through some type of vibration healing. They were able to self-heal, and if given enough time, they would reanimate if their coffin was open. And unfortunately enough, most of the time coffins weren't open unless it was a grave robber who wanted to either get the body and sell it to a medical school, or someone who wanted to try to steal whatever valuables the person was buried with. So I imagine whenever they opened up a grave of a vampire who reanimated, they would find a new job after that. But that was the only way that we could actually scientifically find out if there are vampires that can be reanimated. We'd have to go back and get legal permission to open up any graves prior to embalming fluid, and just to see if there's any reanimation. And if there is, then that would prove the theory. If there isn't, then it doesn't. So I think that would be something interesting to do, but with religious concerns and with moral concerns, it may never come to that. But if that could be done, I would say a time period before embalming fluid, like prior to the 1850s, would be a good place to start as far as seeing if any of the bodies that were buried reanimate.
True. Yeah. No, and there's a lot of ancient well, when they did, a lot of discoveries where there's odd rituals that they find, involved in burials, and like some of it, a lot of it links back to fear of vampires. Like the digging up the remains of an individual and removing the heart, like a year later or something. You've heard of those rituals, I'm sure, where they make a concoction out of the heart and they burn it, and how whatever they do. But
I think they still do that in certain Eastern European countries. I think they still do that if they feel that someone is a possible vampire.
True. Very true. And very, very, those are the type of rituals I'm talking about, where why would they do this based on nothing? It's pretty grim activity there. It's like, why would you do something out of pure fear that this is going to occur, is if you've never had witnessed anything that supports that, so I mean, you got to give that kind of stuff credibility. You have to. As far as like the interdimensional aspect, what we're discovering is that things may not even be as real in our existence as they are in some other plane of existence. So there's a lot more to our reality than what we understand, and to what we have measured. And I don't think the paranormal. I don't think we're getting enough credit for what we do. What do you think, Wynn? I mean, we get enough credit for what we do here?
No, I don't think we do.
No. So what are your outlooks on
Not
that?
at all.
Yeah.
I didn't have to.
I'm fascinated by them, but I honestly, my opinion, I think they're more like energy vampires.
Well, there are those type deals, yeah.
I have met a couple of those.
When you
Yes.
describe the house in the backyard, it's exactly
There are
my
people.
house.
Well, the first thing that happens when you have
And the tree is actually the tree that
Lee's
we
talking.
grew
I'm
up,
sorry. It's in the same room.
with the tree
was she answering the?
in the
Was she, you
front
want
yard.
to give her?
And
She's talking to somebody else. We're just in the same room. Sorry.
No. I just would like to hear. She had something she wanted to say about her opinion. I would like to.
Oh no, not right now. She's doing something else. But yeah, I think they're more energy. But
There are
I
things
agree.
that-
The nutrition could not come from the blood. So what else would they do?
No, and been like that consumption of human flesh comes from a lot of different ritualistic outlook, points of view. Like, there's lots of people that, whether it's tied in there with that, with drinking the blood,
It could either be my
and there's
dad
a
and my
there's a
mom,
biblical
or it could be
aspect
my
to it that the blood is sacred to God, so it's
because
like
they
a
had a very,
abomination to the blood.
they had
You hear about vampires being
violent
holy, all that. No, I haven't really researched this topic, but it kind of
or I
falls
should
into
say
the category of
great-grandparents.
a lot of satanic and demonic rituals are done like that. It's
Well, they say skinwalkers are made, or however, what the word is, by eating human flesh.
Yep, that they committed the
Well,
unforgivable
it's
sin of
almost
cannibalism. Yeah,
Exactly.
very
if they
interesting.
were
All
divorced,
this is tied together. All this stuff is tied together from
they
a point of
dated
view.
and didn't have
And
kids. It would have
and
been
and
a
I don't
whole
think
lot
any of
different.
it is false. I
The
think
relationship.
that
When she got pregnant and had a
I
child,
think a lot of like
that's when things went south because
the whole
he was
monsters.
performing as a
Monsters are
mandolin
real.
player in
Okay?
the band.
100%, they're real.
So
Our parents
women
lied to us.
loved
They
it.
lied to us when they said they're not under a
And
bed.
if she had just been one of the women in the audience,
Exactly. But when I heard you guys talking. When I was little, I was told you can't tell anybody anything. So all my life, till I was very up in age, I never admitted to very few people, and I would get called crazy and all kind of stuff. So now I just don't care. I just don't care what people think.
Well, all great discoveries are suppressed, right? You know that, right? They're all suppressed before they are discovered. Everybody they ever, that's been coming on that they ever awarded the Nobel Peace Prize to was they got given a lot of shit for what they were, doing. Anything outside the box and creative thinking and dare to question. Yeah, there's a lot of persecution that comes with that. But that's what we're here for. We like that, don't we? We like it. That's what we're here for.
Well, I
Yes, we
agree
do.
with you. I think there are more than one level, more than one dimension. I think we live in a multiverse where there are more than more dimensions than we can comprehend, see, feel, or understand. And they say that after the Big Bang, that the everything is moving away from the center of where the Big Bang was much faster than we can account for all the mass within our universe. So that means there must be masses that we cannot account for, which would be the multi-universes. And there's also dark matter and dark energy that we cannot detect or see because it absorbs whatever light touches it. So I think that there are multi-universes, and I'm sure that within these multi-universes and probably within other planetary systems, there's probably some type of extraterrestrial that has come up with technology to be able to travel between the multiverses. So I'm sure that's happening too.
Oh no, absolutely. Well, they've utilized actual tools that can access the multiverse, like the quantum computer can. Things like that. No, our reality is so complex in itself that that we really, I mean, some of this stuff is hard to comprehend. Like I have like your average third grade education, so I really can't comprehend this stuff. But I mean, there are many versions of us, according to theoretical science, that at all times, every decision we make creates another universe, another reality. So very complex, and that's where free will would come into play, because nothing would be predetermined. But then there's other realities that are not like, I mean, that's just within our own reality. There's many mirrored realities, but then there's other dimensions that things that are very different than us dwell. And the whole thought is, yeah, of course, it's hard for me to believe that all these billions of stars and billions of planets, that there's nothing out there physically existing in our universe that is technologically advanced. Of course not. But the problem is the distance between us. The whole concept of aliens, I think, has changed a little bit. Like, nothing can fly 100 billion light years. That's traveling at the speed of light. It'd take a million years. That's one light year. And then the rabbit hole goes deeper. Is any of this even true? Have we been, hand-fed misinformation about what's out there? Nobody knows for sure at this point. But with that said,
but when it comes to traveling too fast, any type of biological body would be smashed against the inside of the space capsule that they were in. So you would have to have some type of overcoming the moment of inertia, so you stay stable even if the spacecraft has to go from Mach 5 to Mach 4, which would squash any type of biological living creature. Or you would have to only be a soul, electromagnetic type personality or intelligence, so that you would not be killed by any type of being smashed by the moment of inertia when the spacecraft slows down or speeds up. So I think that probably if there's space travel taking place, vampires would be the best ones to go, because they're so durable. They can almost withstand anything. And if a vampire has the ability to actually self-induced himself into a long period of hibernation where he doesn't need food, water, he can just be asleep, doesn't need that much
That would make
oxygen.
sense.
Like a hibernating bear, vampires would be the best people to, or best species to be involved in long space travel. Sure. And it would get very boring. If you're bored to death, you're not going to be happy. So if you could go into a coma type state and you don't even realize years are going by, that would be great for long space travel.
It would.
Yeah, no, definitely. But no, I agree with you 100%. Like but the space travel part, my point was there has to be a bending of reality. There has to be some kind of a leaving this fabric of reality and coming out in the same fabric at a much further location. because like you said, no machine could withstand that kind of resistance on it. And we've witnessed things on Earth, like they've captured UAPs that are doing impossible things, and it's whatever this technology is, it's a type of technology, but it's something that is interdimensional, is what they figure, that it doesn't exist solely on our plane of existence. Things that the way we understand it, there's a resistance. There's things decay, they break down. Like the strain on something that travels that fast. Exactly. The pilot. There's things that happen that make these tasks impossible. But if there's an interdimensional type of element to it and a technology we don't understand, that would definitely explain it. And these things are very alien. Years ago, there was a show that I was on. That these people they were all into the extraterrestrial aspect of what the unexplained here on Earth, and whether it's called a demon, whether it's called a vampire, whatever it's called, if it's not human, it's foreign to here. So with that said, they're all aliens. All these things are alien in nature. They're something that aren't supposed to be here. So it's very interesting, looking at it from that point, because if you take all the mystery and the unknown out of something, it makes it more understandable, and it also makes it less frightening. And like you said, if somebody would have taken a cell phone back to the Middle Ages and shown him a cell phone, it would be considered some kind of magic, some kind of you were summoning devils, demons, but at the end of the day, it's technology. That's what it is. It's magical to us, but it's something that we don't understand. And there's a lot, I think, to this field, and which I never thought there would be. When I first got into this, things were pretty black and white. There's the mystical and the practical, but I mean, when you look into this, a lot of how these entities are doing what they're doing, there has to be some kind of technology we don't understand, a method or a means of doing something.
I definitely talk about in my book, Vampires Dead or Alive, my theories about how a vampire shapeshifts. And one thing that I feel a vampire has harnessed is some type of strong energy, whether it's ley lines magnified or whether it is a black hole. But I think they shapeshift by localizing the bending of time for just their person, and they go back in time to when their soul was in the body of a bat. And then that's how they instantaneously can shapeshift into a bat. Now, of course, I feel that everyone is reincarnated, and that we've probably been reincarnated who knows how many times since the Earth has started, and maybe reincarnated on other planets before the Earth was even here. So I think that a vampire can harness the technology of some type of energy strong enough to bend space and time and go back, localize just for themselves, go back in time to when they, was a bat, were a bat, and then they instantaneously change. So I think that's how they do shape shifting. And I think they dematerialize the same way. They go back in time to when their soul, which is just electromagnetic energy, was just a soul. They didn't have a biological body. And then they dematerialize. Well, so all that is in my book, Vampires Dead or Alive.
Very, very interesting book. Anybody out there that is interested in vampires or the paranormal period, because it's not just vampires, anything, the unknown, mysterious. No, very interesting read. It sounds like this would be that Keith has put together here, because it's an untraditional outlook on things, and a very practical possible outlook, which is very, very, very good.
And it's information given at an angle that no one else has really covered it before. No one else has ever tried to cover how a vampire does what a vampire does. And I do that with all the traditional characteristics of a vampire. I think there must be at least 13 or 14 chapters in my book.
Well, you're using you're using traditional means, like you're combining science with it, which like from a logical output, how could this thing be doing this? And which is, I think that's where we're going to make a lot of gains in this field, is by using logic rather than the more mystical this could be using logic and trying to understand how these things are doing what they're doing. Yeah, very, very interesting stuff. Very interesting. There's like with the way that spirits just in basis manifest. There is a physical material that they're using. Like, this is something that, like, if it's weird, because when I started doing this, I didn't take it into, I didn't study ahead of time. I didn't try to indoctrinate anybody's theory when I first started. I tried to do it from a completely raw aspect. Go out there and document this stuff, and if it's real, in fact, then present the evidence at raw level. If it's not, then it's not. Definitely, there's something going on here. There's something unexplained. There's a overwhelming amount of evidence that supports that. What's going on? That's what we got to try to understand. And these how I look at it, like, maybe these things understand our world more than we do. Maybe they understand our physics more than we do. Like, maybe like how they're able to bend elements to manifest and things like that. It's like they're like a scientist on steroids. Like, they're physicists. They understand like things that we don't. It's like a lot of it's like an illusionist. I think like they're performing tricks. Like, when you deal with the demonic, I know that seems to be the case. It's
well, the rule of physics here in our share of the multiverse, and the rule of physics might be different in other planets, so other universes. So it kind of makes the vampires dead or alive is a more thought-provoking, mind-blowing is what some people say who read it, because they said every chapter is something I would have never thought of. Now, if you want a safer book, you can always read The Hayes House Ghosts Are People Too. That's just old-fashioned ghosts and spirits they're good ghosts and spirits. They're not evil or demonic, and they love the house. The two families that lived at the Hayes House, the Buck family who built the Hayes House in 1908, and the Hayes family that moved in 1942, and the last Hayes family member, Kathleen, moved out and sold the house in 1996. They really loved that house, and their life was invested in the house. And I think that allows residual energy and also a pleasant spot for a ghost or spirit to want to come back and visit after their death. And I think they truly look out for the Hayes House, just like you would look out for a child. And I noticed that when Hurricane Michael came along. Hurricane Michael was like went from a Category 4 to a Category 5 storm in October of 2018. And Apalachicola is on the Apalachicola River, and it has some barrier islands in front of it, but it's got like a little bay that's connected to the Gulf of Mexico to the south side, and to the east side is the Apalachicola River. And the Apalachicola River from the east came up to the Hayes House probably about a half a block to actually touching the property. And the same to the south. The bay and the Gulf of Mexico came up about a half a block south from the Hayes House. So I think the ghosts and spirits are bending over backwards to keep that storm from damaging the Hayes House. And I was in a shelter, and when I got out and was able to purchase a phone, because my phone got wet, and I was able to contact the Hayes House and find out the Hayes House was fine, I was happy, because as an empath, I think that I share the feelings that the Buck family and the Hayes family have, and they love the Hayes house. I love it too. I want to protect it as much as I can. I'm not the owner of it, and I can only do so much. But I think as an empath, I get that from sharing the thoughts and feelings and emotions, strong emotions of the past family members that lived there, the Buck family and the Hayes family. But I was so happy once I found out that after the storm, the Hayes house is still standing and was okay.
No, I agree. No, a lot of these active locations, like one that I never got to check out, but I'm sad I didn't, was the Wolf Manor. You ever heard of the Wolf Manor, Gwen? You ever heard of that in Clovis, California? Todd Wolf.
I haven't.
Very, very hard place. Well, it was demolished back in the year, quite a while ago.
Yeah.
These need to be viewed as like scientific. Important. They need to be viewed as being an important, not only historical but scientific point of research or the study phenomenon. A lot of places like that are demolished, and it's too bad. They need to be studied further. Yeah. So, have you stayed there?
I agree.
Yeah. Have you stayed in the location? Like I'm assuming you have, like, to study the for the book that you wrote on this location. Have you stayed there?
Oh, I spent a couple nights in the Hayes house before I wrote the book as an Airbnb. Right. I just rented the room as an Airbnb. But after I got written permission, I didn't spend the night there, but I had a key from the owner, and I was able to go there anytime I wanted and work on paranormal research, as long as I had to be very careful not to scare away any of the Airbnb people, because they had 2 or 3 rooms that were Airbnb, and they also rented out space for artists to come and paint. Have a quiet place to paint and stuff like that. And there was also a full-time tenant on the 3rd floor apartment. So I was just very cautious to not, let anyone know what I was doing other than the owner.
Right. Well,
because some people, if they think you're doing paranormal research, they'll just up and leave. And I don't want to scare away business for anyone.
You guys, we got about 3 minutes left. Do you want to tell us how we can, people can get in touch with you, Keith?
Yeah.
Well, I just like to cover both of my books, Vampires, Dead or Alive, and The Hayes House, Ghost or People too. They're available Amazon paperback. Well, actually, the Hayes House, Ghost or People 2 is no longer available on paperback. It's only available ebook on Kindle. But Vampires, Dead or Alive is available on Amazon paperback and also available on Kindle. And I have a YouTube channel. You can always leave a comment on the YouTube channel if you want me to come and do paranormal research at your location. My YouTube channel is called Paranormal Short Sessions by Keith Evans. And I also have a Facebook and a Instagram page where I put up at least promos for my paranormal short sessions. Sometimes Instagram and Facebook will cut the promo. The promo might be between 30 seconds to a minute. But if you go to my YouTube channel, Paranormal Short Sessions by Keith Evans, you'll get to see all the promo. And then I put my paranormal short sessions, which are probably anywhere from 15 minutes to 30 minutes long at the most.
Thank you very much. I want to thank you, Keith, for being
on
the show.
I appreciate you all for having me on. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
No, thank you for reaching out. Thank you. It's been an honor to have you on the show. Very interesting stuff. Very, very, very interesting. We need more people like you in this field.
Walked in, there was an interview that
So, is there
just
anything else that
like,
we got time now? We got time. It always flies by. We're having a good conversation.
Oh, yeah.
They left.
Yeah, so we have time.
And
okay. Well,
I want to put you, and then we sat down.
Thank you, Keith. I'm gonna drop you down so Chad can close out.
Thank you. All right.
All right. Well, that was
All right.
very very interesting outlook, and I appreciate it. I'd like to have him back on the show if he wants to come back on.
That'd be cool.
Have you heard of that brain fog thing you get from COVID-19? I just got over it not too long ago again, and like scrambles my brain.
Yeah.
Tough to do a podcast when your brain's scrambled.
He kept saying,
No comment. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here as always, and we'll see what we got going on for next week. But historic locations, there is one in Portland, Oregon called the White Eagle Saloon. We're going to be returning to that one. Very, very active location, and spent some time in there. We did years ago. Really cool stuff happened, so we're going to go back and see what we can.
He knows that I miss my
That'd be cool.
my grandmother. He's there
Anyhow,
for me.
everybody have a good night, and
He had a lot of
next
really
time.
sweet things to say.
All right. Good night.
Good night, Glenn. Have a good evening.
Let me know he was there
You
for me.
too.